Welcome to Kaiser Watch with John Kaiser. I'm your host, Jim Goddard. John, welcome back to the show.
Jim, glad to be back on the show. Today we're going to talk about some results updates that just came out this week.
Eskay Mining provided an update for last week's work in the Scarlet Ridge area. What are the implications for an Eskay Creek 2 discovery?
Well, the results for the initial holes reported for the Scarlet Ridge area do create hope that the eastern anticline, which is at the northern end of the Eskay property in the Golden Triangle, about 7 kilometers southeast of the original Eskay Creek 1, does have potential to host a similar gold and silver enriched VMS system. Now, this area has seen very little historical exploration compared to the main Eskay anticline, which hosts the Eskay Creek 1. Most of the work on the Eskay ground, it has been in the Sib-Lulu area, where SSR Mining spent $7.7 million between 2017 and 18 before dropping out. And farther down by the previous owner of Eskay Mining in the TV Jeff area, where the current management has focused a lot of activity in the past couple years. But in the Scarlet Ridge area, none of the holes reported anything resembling hole 109 or even the 22 zone south of the Eskay Creek 1, which is the area where Murray Pesham's Calpine Resources beavered away in 1988 and early 1989 before a 1 kilometer step out in hole 109 delivered the 21B zone, which was a world-class discovery. The holes that they reported for the Scarlet Valley area, they were less than 5 meter intervals. Gold was below 1 gram per ton. Silver was a bit better, but somewhere between 12 and 96 gram per ton, half to 3 ounce per ton silver numbers. But the company, as in context of the other work that they did in the Tarn Lake Scarlet Knob area, which is about 3 kilometers to the southwest, they now believe that that area, the mineralization there, is distal to what is going to become the focus for 2023. Now, they drilled the Tarn Lake Scarlet Knob area quite late in the season, and only the Tarn Lake area got any holes into it. They reported 15 holes were done, but only 3 of them were good enough for them to talk about significant intersections. Hole 10 was the best, and it had 5.43 meters of 4.1 gram per ton gold and 98.3 gram per ton silver. Those are good numbers and indicative that yes, their theory may be correct, that this area, which has the same Eskay rhyolite that hosts the 21B zone, it has a series of east-west trending andesite dikes, which they believe are the feeder structures. And what's interesting is the Bruce Glacier, it flows down the mountain and sort of peters out to the north of where Tarn Lake is on the west and Scarlet Knob is on the east. There's about 850 meters of glacier in between. And the Scarlet Knob area had even better gold-silver values in surface sampling, but they did not get around to drilling that. They plan to go back in there this summer and drill both areas, and they're also looking at the possibility of drilling through the glacier. I don't know whether that's something they allow to do, the permitting bodies allow them to do, or if there are some physical constraints for it. But they believe that these 2 mineralized systems, they are connected underneath this Bruce Glacier, and there's a good chance that this summer they finally come up with something resembling Eskay Creek 1. Now, and what this all means, of course, is that this year's results are encouraging. And I kind of anticipated they would only be encouraging, not discovery signaling, just by the way the news releases were worded. They drilled 29,500 meters last year. Much of it was in the TV Jeff area, which has already, everything's been reported, and they do want to return to that. At the end of last year, I downgraded them from a fair spec value rated 2022 favorite to simply part of my bottom fish 2023 collection. However, we don't know how much all this work cost. The financials, the November 30th financials are due at the end of this month. I would suggest wait to see. That will reflect most of the money spent on this program. How much do they have left? In a market like this where you have gold perking up, where you have a lot of companies that are relatively cheap and starting to show signs of life, Eskay Mining is in a very vulnerable position. They probably will need to refinance to have a program on a scale comparable to what they did this year. But with 2 years of not delivering the big discovery hole that you want, the market's going to be a bit jaded. So I would probably say, put this one on the bottom fish list, watch to see how Mac Balcom figures out how to finance this, what the reaction is to what the balance sheet looks like. And one of the nice things about the last couple of years is that there's only going to be 2.2 million warrants left as an overhang, and they're way up at $3.40 left over from the flow-through financing they did last year. So when this company finances and it catches the wave of hopefully a continuation of the initial enthusiasm we're seeing in the resource juniors for 2023, they catch the wave and head into the summer golden triangle season, and this time with their focus in this new Scarlet Ridge area in the Tarn Lake Scarlet Knob, where they've got everything that looks just like Eskay Creek except the massive sulfide gold silver enriched zone. This is going to be an interesting summer for this company. It'll probably be the one where the market either ends up absolutely happy or finally gives up on this play.
Why was Patriot Battery Metals halted in late trading on Wednesday?
It was halted at noon West Coast time, pending a news release. Now, this company has 132 million shares, fully diluted, trading at $8. That means it has a market cap of $1 billion. It has drilled about 100 holes on the Corvette lithium project in the James Bay region of Quebec, where they've had excellent results supporting this valuation. So I wasn't really expecting assay results as a reason to halt the stock with 1 hour left in trading. I also wasn't expecting some sort of bought deal by a brokerage group or group of brokerage firms, because they had raised $20 million at $13 and a flow-through charity deal in September, and another $4 million recently as part of an IPO that came with listing on the ASX. So I really didn't expect financing from the brokerage sector. I did consider the possibility that maybe there was a strategic investor potentially interested in making a sizable investment at a premium to the market. There was also an outside chance of that they had received an unsolicited takeover bid from somebody, and you'd have to be somebody pretty big to do this at this stage. And I would think of Rio Tinto, who has made no secret that it is very much interested in the lithium future, which is expected to be a $100 to $200 billion a year market by 2030, 35. And the company itself has got enough work done that sometime in the second quarter, they will have a resource estimate and be in a position to begin economic studies. So I also didn't expect this news release to be suddenly, okay, here we have 50 million tons of 1.5% lithium oxide. So it was kind of a puzzle what it was, and it made me also worry that every world-class discovery is not recognized as such until somebody files a lawsuit claiming that title actually belongs to them. So there's always this fear, when do we get a press release saying that, oh, somebody claims that they actually own this world-class discovery? And then, of course, in Canada, there's always the risk that suddenly you received an injunction to stop drilling because a First Nation group has complained that some sensitive habitat is being impacted and is going to destroy their traditional ability to do whatever it is that they had been doing in that area. But fortunately, this is not Northern Ontario. This is a central northern Quebec, James Bay area, where the First Nation groups are very commercially engaged in anything and are probably looking at this with great curiosity about the positive impact this will have on their economic future in this area. So it turns out the explanation was, yes, it was results. It was a whole batch of results, a whole 67 to 83. And I think the reason they put this out, I mean, obviously they had a lot of these results already. They didn't have to do it in the middle of the market, but the market always likes a halt for something. And the justification for the halt this time was that it included the best ever hole reported for the Corvette project. Hole 83 was 157 meters of 2.12% lithium oxide, and that included a sub-interval of 25 meters of 5%. Now, at $30 a pound lithium carbonate, that 5% interval has a rock value of $8,200 a ton, and while the broader 2% interval is $3,300 per ton. And if you don't like $30 lithium, just divide that by 3 to get the $10 price, where people think in the long run that's where lithium carbonate prices will stabilize it. You still have very impressive rock values for mineralization across very broad widths that is within close enough to surface to be open pittable. But here's the other interesting thing about why this news is exciting. This so-called CV5 cluster, it's actually what was originally 3 pegmatites, one called CV1 at the southwest end, CV2 at the northeast end, and then CV5 in the middle. And the whole strike is now 2.2 kilometers. Well, this was at the northeastern end, and where they've got a now 250-meter segment of substantially thicker mineralization and stronger grades than they have farther to the southwest. And when you project the trend of this pegmatite, it's 2 kilometers under this long lake, which sort of tracks much of this Corvette trend. And at the 2 kilometers farther, there's the CV4 outcropping pegmatite. It doesn't look very impressive, hasn't been drilled yet for that reason, but it looks like the bulk of this wide, high-grade mineralization projects under the lake, so it hasn't been visible. So now the market's thinking, wow, what if they continue to push this? Now, just to create some context, I created a little back-of-the-napkin calculation where you say, okay, you got 2,000 meters of strike. Let's say it averages 50 meters. You can chase it down to 200 meters, and then you apply 2.6 specific gravity. That comes up with a 52 million ton open pittable footprint. And if that's grading at least 1% lithium oxide, that's $1,600 rock, or about $500 rock if you knock lithium carbonate back to $10. Very, very impressive. And if you double the strike of this, we're talking easily a 50 to 100 million ton potential target. And the beauty of these pegmatites is you can very quickly delineate drill them. I mean, they really only started in late 2021. They already have 100 holes into this particular CV5 cluster. They'll have a resource estimate by Q3. By then the market will understand, okay, here's what it looks like, here's its geometry, here's how they're likely going to develop it, and they'll push it into the the economic study phase. So this now clearly is starting to have world-class proportions, and normally when you get some high-grade interval, it's typically an infill hole in the middle of the deposit, and we go, oh, that's nice, so you have a nice high-grade core. Here we're talking about this 2-kilometer-long pegmatite system, which now is getting richer and thicker at the northeastern end. They did mention that they have one step-out hole 100 meters to the northeast on number 93, and it has about 50 meters of what they call spodumene mineralization. They don't get into visuals about saying how big the crystals are or what it's going to be, but I believe the impression that the reason they halted this is that they're seeing this as a continuing trend of a thickened pegmatite with much higher grades than has been seen in the rest of this pegmatite, which is already with a grade and width that says this is going to be a future mine development candidate.
Does the Patriot News have any implication for 2023 Favorite Brunswick Exploration?
You know, when a junior in a region delivers new and better results than ever seen before for a discovery, it really creates a powerful boost for the area play psychology. And Brunswick Exploration is particularly well positioned to benefit from this development. I have it now as a fair spec value rated favorite for 2023 because this company, since early 2022, has been assembling land packages with LCT-type pegmatite potential right since the start, when Bob Wares sort of noticed that the lithium demand was going to the roof. The policy talk was, well, EVs are going to replace ICE cars. And he scratched his head and said, gosh, I wonder if I missed the boat on this. And he started looking around with his co-worker, Killian Charles, and they went through the archives and checked all these areas where there had been pegmatites documented as a byproduct of exploration for base and precious metals deposits for the past 100 years. And they checked all the claim maps, and they said, most of this stuff is open. So they repurposed this company, which is supposed to be a VMS exploration company, and said, we're going to be a grassroots lithium company. And they assemble land positions in Atlantic Canada, in Quebec, in Ontario. And even this week, they suddenly surprised the market by announcing an 80,000 hectare cluster of claims in Saskatchewan, in a roughly sort of a triangle area between Flin Flon and La Ronge and South End, in the middle of which Searchlight Resources staked the Jan Lake pegmatite field that Stephen Wallace was watching. But apparently there's all kinds of other pegmatites that have been documented in the past, but nobody in the Saskatchewan Geological Survey has ever really paid much attention to this, and somehow Bob Wares and his team were able to identify these and stake them. We don't know that they're going to be LCT type. We know they are going to be Evolve type, that are in the running for being LCT type, but they picked up this big land package. Now, the stock took a bit of a hit at the beginning of this year when they provided a corporate overview about what had been accomplished in 2022. And what the market saw was that, the Pontiac area down south of Val-d'Or, it's not very interesting, as interesting as they thought. Atlantic Canada, when they put the boots on the ground with their XRF guns and started shooting for rubidium, they did find LCT potential, but what they didn't find is lots of outcropping visual evidence of sizable bodies. And they realized, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, this is going to be a lot of work. There's a lot of moss to peel away to find out if there's pegmatites large enough to bother drilling. So they downgraded that potential. Also on the north shore of the St. Lawrence River on the Quebec side, that they were quite excited in the summer about that, but by the time they looked at it, they realized, that it just doesn't have the elevated lithium that we're looking for. So the market's reading paragraph after paragraph of this downgrade, and sort of thinking, it's not working out. But on the other hand, the Hearst project, about which they had very little to say, they first staked it in April. It's in Ontario, and they didn't disclose it until October because they had to negotiate an inlier claim to tie up the entire land package. And there's LCT type pegmatites there, large ones. They've never been drilled, and Brunswick will be drilling them by early February. So that'll be the first shot at coming up with some big intersections with hopefully over 1% lithium oxide in it. But the really big coup was in late November. Bob Wares, who was a founder of the original Osisko company that had developed the Malartic mine and continues to be very much connected with Sean Rosen and the rest of the Osisko crowd, he approached Osisko Development about these projects in the James Bay region that Andre Gaumond's Virginia Mines had assembled during the post-spin-out Virginia gold buyout. And they had continued in this area. And Andre Gaumond was interested in greenstone belts, only base metal and precious metals. And he had staked these long linear trends. One of them was the Plex property. Another was what they now call the Anakatau project. The Anakatau project turns out to be east of the CYR, the Sear pegmatite field, which Paul Matizik's Lithium 1 had delineated before being bought out by ASX-listed Galaxy Minerals, which has since created a proven and probable reserve of 37.2 million tons of 1.2%. And then they were merged into Allchem, which is now which used to be Oro Cobre, which was an Australian-listed company focused on lithium triangle. It's now developing this so-called Galaxy pegmatite that has been renamed the James Bay pegmatite. But the drilling by Galaxy had managed to encounter decent LCT-enriched pegmatite at the eastern end of the property, apparently only 100 meters from the border. And it turns out that these people weren't really aware of it. When Bob was surprised that this land was still available, that Allkem hadn't approached Osisko to acquire it, to have whatever repetitions or extensions there are of this pegmatite trend to the east. Well, you snooze, you lose. Bob did the deal, 90% farming. It's not cheap, but they're going to be in there by late February drilling this. And why didn't Allkem bother? Or was it because they knew there was nothing there? Well, it turned out that 2 weeks ago, they sort of noticed there was this land position to the east, and they approached Osisko Development about potentially acquiring it, and Osisko sort of shrugged, well, Brunswick Exploration beats you to it. They already have the deal. But the Plex project is the one that is most interesting to benefit from the latest bigger and better results that Patriot Battery Metals has delivered for Corvette. Corvette was also part of that whole sort of greenstone trend that Osisko owned. And during Lithium Mania 1.0 that ran from 2015 onward, Dave Hodge got one of his juniors to jump onto the lithium bandwagon. They optioned this. Never really got anything done. They optioned it from Osisko. Then the lithium price tanked in 2018. It was only in 2021 when the Australians sort of came knocking on the door after lithium carbonate prices had started to rebound, that this company, after 2 rollbacks, emerged as Patriot Battery Metals, and they wrapped up the deal with Osisko, and they have this extensive trend where there are multiple pegmatite outcrops known. They're focused on the CV5 cluster, which looks like it has world-class dimensions, but this sort of southwest-west trending greenstone belt, it sort of inflects and heads in a northwest-west direction, and Osisko still held that, and that's the Plex project that Virginia Mines had developed. And it's sort of an interesting anecdote. When Andre Gaumond was running the program back then, over a decade ago, one of the junior geologists was Francois Goulet, and he became Andre's man for Harfang exploration until late 2021 when Francois decided that he had enough of chasing mineralization at the Radisson serpent target area, which is also in the north in James Bay. And that's a story that I'm writing to my bottom fish KRO subscribers about which you will hear more. Anyways, Andre had forbidden the junior geologists from taking samples up there on those hills. And that's, of course, where the geologists all wanted to fill their bags with samples, because there were no mosquitoes, there was no bush. It was perfect for sampling. And Andre said, no, that's probably a pegmatite, and there's never any gold or copper associated with those, so don't you dare waste time and money collecting samples of it. Well, Francois Goulet is now the exploration manager for Brunswick Exploration for Quebec, and he's been busy jogging his memory of all those places where he marched the ground where they weren't supposed to collect samples. And so the story here with the Plex project is, they won't be able to get in there until June or this summer, but they will have people familiar with the lay of the land, where they were supposed to be looking for gold and copper, where they weren't supposed to be looking because there was only going to be worthless pegmatites. They'll be going in there and hitting these pegmatites. And the interesting thing about this latest development of the at Corvette, that CV5, is although these pegmatites are supposed to be weathered, the opposite of recessive, it looks like these project under the lake. So there has been some sort of erosion that has dug out these pegmatites so that only portions of them are outcropping. And so now the possibility emerges that they could be quite close to surface, but still obscured by these bodies of water. And the CV4 showing, which looks like a nothing burger, 2 kilometers northeast of the CV5, CV1 area, that could be the edge of a solid, very substantial body, another 50 million ton body. So Brunswick Exploration, I expect, is going to benefit from this latest development, which is really scaling the James Bay area into world-class proportion. And I think it won't be long before we see the Rio Tintos of the world come looking for a stake in this region. This is not like the 1990s diamond period when Rio Tinto's Kennecott was able to do deals with Aber and the DHK and all these other juniors. Back then, the market was not as evolved in terms of funding the big amount needed for discovery exploration. That funding market mechanism is now in place, so the juniors don't have to do any farm outs to majors. If the majors want in, they're going to have to make strategic investments at premium to market, or just make an outright preemptive bid for the junior.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been talking with John Kaiser. I'm Jim Goddard. Comments made on Kaiser Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as a recommendation to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at kaiserresearch.com.